from several angles. Yeah, I would, I mean, I'm not a big fan of summer camps per se, as far as hosting them, although they can be a huge moneymaker done right. My biggest bitch about camps is I don't want to work my staff from 7 a.m. to 3 o'clock and then from 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock and burn them out and then get back to prime time, back to school and not have them fresh, right? So the summer camps I've seen that have been incredibly profitable but done well have been staffed by people who aren't your normal staff running the school. And by the way, it's easy to hire a teacher for the summer. A friend of mine in Maryland hired a gal who was a master's in education administration and administrator at an elementary school, I think, that ran everything. And then she hired part-timers underneath her. And the only thing him or his staff had to do was teach like a martial arts class once, for an hour when they normally would have been at the school anyway. So not a big deal. But on the particular subject that you're talking about, Paul, is there's several things to look at. Something I discovered many years ago is we were doing an awful lot of PE teacher for the day. This goes back into the 80s, but then before and after school enrichment programs that were converting really well. The PE teacher for the day, Ron, was the pre-genesis for the School Talks program. And actually, Greg Silva and I were working back and forth on a lot of that kind of stuff back in the 80s. But what I found was a lot of the schools that I was having trouble getting into, or just in launching it, is a lot of the same people who are running after school care in some of these elementary schools were also running summer camps. And so what I did is I built a relationship with them in the summer camp and then carried that over into their after school care program and then morphed that into getting into the rest of the school for PE teacher for the day and then the after school enrichment program. So it was a natural, easy, just kind of slide in into the relationship. And as you said, normally you would want January, February, March, if you're having a camp, you would want to be filling it up in the first quarter. And if you're going to go out and do stuff in the camps, you want to talk to them fairly early in the year too, because some of them will think we have our schedule completely set, talk to us about next year if you're talking to them right now. On the flip side of that conversation is things have been so uncertain and fell apart, got reconstituted, fell apart again, all of that kind of stuff, that you're not going to have that same problem if they are in fact open. And all across the country, and again, every county is different, every state is different, but there's a big push to have daycare and summer camps open because you can't get parents back to work if there's not somewhere for their 6-year-old, right, to be during the day. So even in the tighter lockdowns, daycares and summer camps are tending to be open more quickly with fewer concern, in part because there's fewer concern with 6-year-olds than there are with 78-year-olds, and in part because there's an underlying urgency to it, right? And so, as you've already found, Paul, is just picking up the phone or showing up. I stumbled across here that there were summer camps running in some, not all, but in like 25% of our local elementary schools, there were summer camps running that I wouldn't have ever known about. So it was kind of like 2 or 3 or 4 elementary schools together, there would be one. And actually, I just started showing up and knocking on the door and walking in and talking to who was ever there and setting them up, right? There tends to be several types of camps. There's the YMCA, there's the local rec center, community center. I think that's what you interacted with there, right? Then there are some that are tied into the local elementary schools where, again, like here, 25% or 1 out of 5 or something like that were having one. So it wasn't all of them, but some of them had them. And those were frankly the hardest ones for me to find. And then there are some that don't have a physical facility, that really all they have is a bus and a meeting place. And then they put the kids on the bus and they take them to the movie theater, they take them to the pool, one thing or another. Those are probably having the most difficult time right now, because the places that they take them are going to be variable on whether they're opening or not opening, and so forth. Another aspect to consider is AMC theaters, Regal cinemas, a lot of those. A lot of them will have special morning shows during the summer and most of the traffic at that morning shows are these summer camps that are busing the kids in to come in. Now, I don't think Regal's opening until mid-July in most places. AMC's not opening until mid-July. So, that one, if they do it at all, isn't for a while. There's also a article in the Wall Street Journal today that Disney's considering pushing Mulan as well. So they're considering not releasing Mulan in July. Because the biggies that we have this summer when the theaters reopen, the big ones that I'm aware of that are supposed to still open are Mulan and Wonder Woman. On the summer camps, you're right. And then what you do with the summer camps is, I hear people talk about replicating two things: replicating the PE for the day structure, or replicating like the full after school enrichment program structure. I always gravitate on the summer camps to doing the one day in and out where I get permission slips. And I'll tell you an enhancement, Paul, for the one that you do. You get permission slips, you do the one day, and then you show up, have a staff member at least there between 5 and 6 o'clock to make appointments for all the kids. Because then when the parents show up, the conversation is, hey, which child is yours? Billy. Oh, Billy did great today. We did a little martial arts class. I'm sure you knew about it because they sent home the information. With all the kids, we're doing 2 free weeks of lessons and a free uniform at the school. I wanted to go ahead and schedule a time. And Billy, I'd asked earlier, had said that he wanted to come and do that. Because, of course, you say, who would like to have 2 free weeks? And they all raise their hand. And so Billy told me earlier that he would want to do it, right? So that's an enhancement. The other part is you can do the equivalent of an after-school enrichment program. In other words, you go to the same place twice a week for 3 weeks, or 3 times a week for 2 weeks, or something like that. One thing to be careful about with doing that is a lot of these camps have a different group of kids every week. And so now you try to create continuity, but they're turning over who's there every week, right? So it becomes almost impossible to have continuity. The other aspect is when I go into an elementary school and do an after-school enrichment program, if I go into a school with 300 kids, we'll get 20% of them more or less to register for the after-school program. So 300 kids equals 60 in the after-school enrichment program equals 20, 25 enrollments. But if I'm going into a daycare that has 50 school-age kids, and now I try to go through the same thing, I might be lucky to get 10 of them. But then my problem is, even with those 10, is that continuity. And so I've always found that if they have a lot of turnover, maybe I go do it, I do a one-day thing in June, I do 2 one-day things in July spread out, I do a one-day deal in August, depending upon what their turnover is. I can go back 3 or 4 or 5 times with a separate independent one-day thing with permission slips, showing up at 5 to make appointment, and actually do a lot better than trying to do some kind of 5 lesson or 6 lesson deal, because it's just not all, but a lot of them, it's just impossible for that continuity. Does that make sense? So everybody should listen to that, though. The daycares and by the way, on the summer camps, the one I didn't mention was daycares. So pretty much all of the daycares, assuming they do school-age kids. And by the way, I made a mistake of showing up at a daycare and they were all in high chairs, right? So you got to know ahead of time that it's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, year olds, that it's not 12, 18-month-olds. If they're in high chairs, it doesn't do you any good. But the daycares, a lot of them, Children's World, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, they all have, usually, not all, but most of them have summer camps. And then the other one is churches. So some of the churches do a week of vacation Bible school, or whatever they call it in that particular church. They have different ways of phrasing it. Others do 2, 3, 4 week camp. But either way, it's something that you can go in and do something with, right? So if they have the kids there for 5 hours a day for a week, or if they have camps where they have kids there all summer, you can do things with. And the bigger the church, especially the big evangelical churches, so if you're especially if you're in the Bible Belt, I mean, that's something you want to be all over. Does that help a little bit, Paul?
Great. That's my 20 student idea for the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And Boy Scouts, I don't know if you mentioned the Boy Scouts, those types.
No, I didn't. Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. Almost always Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts have camps. Now, the Boy Scout camps tend to be something like they do a week and they all have tents out at the lake or something, which is great. Around here, everywhere in the country, but there are also big Boy Scout camps. I haven't seen the equivalent Girl Scout versions, but like real, go away for the week up in the mountains type of things. Those you can do as well. You've got to be careful that you're not out at a camp where everybody came from 500 miles away and you're just entertaining them. But if it's a camp where they're mostly local, that's useful. I've done a ton of those over the years. But Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts at the what do they call it? The den and pack level will do little local things oftentimes where they go camp out at the lake for the week or some such thing. And you can go do those just as easily. They love to have it. We've done hundreds, if not thousands of those. Girl Scouts do similar things. Now you got my mind working, Paul. There's also, what was just on my mind? There's other organizations that do this stuff. We mentioned YMCA, YWCA, community centers, camps that just have a bus, church groups, Boy Scout, Girl Scout, elementary schools, of course, private elementary schools as well. What was the other thing on my mind?
Gymnastics programs.
Gymnastics programs. Well, that's what it was. Sports camps. So, like here, the local colleges, they'll have sports camps for the week. So they have a football camp, or a gymnastics school will do an activity. A dance school might do a summer camp the same way we would as martial arts schools do those camps. So those are possibilities. But there also oftentimes are sports camps. Denver, the Denver Broncos have a little baseball, or their football camp. The Rockies have a little baseball. Yeah, it shows how much I care. But they have a football thing. They have a baseball thing. The colleges have different camps that are available. Even some of them nowadays, there's, my son all summer was going to the STEM thing. So they had little C+ programming, app creation, all of that kind of stuff. That's a little more of a stretch, but anywhere you find a group organized is an opportunity. Greg, did I leave any of those out? Macy?
No, sir. I think you got most of the big ones that I can think of.
The other side of it, I think it was your idea, so I want to give credit, was, if I remember correctly, part of your idea was there's all these big hotels that are just a wasteland right now. So if you needed more square footage to do a camp, maybe I'm giving you credit for it wasn't your idea, Greg, but if you needed space beyond what you have physically, you could rent space at these big hotels probably for a song, if legally they're allowed to do it in your area. my guess would be is if you let them do a box lunch at lunch, they would almost give you the ballroom space for free. Because really they only thrive on rooms and banquet. So that was one thing. The other thing, and this was Greg's for sure, is the fact that a lot of these other camps are shut down and their staff are all kind of out of work because that's where they would have gone. If you wanted to, it gives you the opportunity to massively promote and suck up all those kids that would be in those other camps. Again, it's a personal choice. Paul Miller, who's a member, I don't see him or his son's on the meeting today, but he probably has the highest grossing summer camps of anybody in the martial arts world, period. But he has transport after school care and martial arts schools combined in 4 coming on 5 locations. So he'll do, well into the 7 figures on camps over the summer. But from a regular, normal martial arts standpoint, I tend to like Master Smiths and have done many times rank advancement camps. So a 1 week and they get their 16 lessons. And so in 1 week or in 2 weeks, they could move up a belt. That's very popular for just promoting internal. When you get into the level that we're talking about with Paul, that's usually you're promoting pretty dramatically external, although they have a big, solid built-in base.
Yeah, we did a summer intensive camp starting next week, and we normally did it an 8-hour block, but next week to get more numbers in the school, we just did a 4-hour chunk, and we filled it. I mean, just parents are really looking forward to getting their kids out of the house right now. So, we just did 2 4-hour chunks. So we did from 8 to 12:30, and then 12:30 to 4:30, and like I said, it's packed.
Yeah. Did you do 2 4-hour chunks, or did you just do total of 4 hours?
2 4-hour chunks.
Okay, so you could double up on the volume per square footage.
And we didn't change our rate or anything, and we still got the same, uptake of people wanting to do summer intensive camps.
Excellent. And that's one that you can charge a lot for, right? Because there's a high perceived value to it. And
that 4-hour chunk for 5 days.
How much?
400.
Yeah.
So we're getting basically, but we are also limited on numbers because we can't do, it's like some of the states can do groups of 10 and stuff like that. We still have to do small groups and everything else. So we're funneling through 15 people in the building.
Yeah. The other, and this is just from schlepping my now 12-year-old around, an awful lot of these camps, whether it's the church camps or the STEM camps or whatever, they're not full day camps. Very few of the ones that I've done with Chase the last couple of years really were like 8 to 4 or 5 that I would think of as a working parent would do. An awful lot of them were 10 to 2, so whether they're 3 hours or 4 hours or something like that. And like on the rank advancement thing that you came across in part because of square footage, that doesn't take away the perceived value in any way, shape, or form. And also, if you weren't doing 2 of them back to back, you could pull some of those things off without burning your staff into, without drilling them into the ground. So there is a high perceived value for that as well. The main thing, Paul, when you do the camp that you just did, is the mistake is to just go out and do the thing and think by teaching the class and sending them all home with flyers that you're going to get much of a return, right? It's just like doing the school talks thing, and all you do is you give them out flyers and say, hey, we have a free class this Saturday. That, it's not that you get no traffic, it's just that you don't get much. But as long as you get name, address, phone number, email address, and then you immediately, and by immediately, I mean like parents have picked up the kids and they're on their way home. You call them that day while the kid still remembers having done it, right? You'll get a pretty good conversion rate. The biggest thing, of course, on calling them is they don't answer a number that they don't recognize. So you've got to call, leave a voicemail, text, but the text has to include that contact information. And then you've got to really, and in the summer camp environment, I have rarely run into anybody who was sensitive to you really pitching the kids hard, right? If I'm in an elementary school, I've had them say you can't even tell the name of the school, and they're irritated the logo's on the uniform. But in the summer camp environment, they really don't care. So almost 100% of the time. So I can really pitch, guys. The only reason I'm doing this is to give you a little bit of exposure to our free introductory class. We're giving every one of you 2 free weeks in a uniform, and the uniform is very valuable. But you got to make sure that here's the information. Talk to your parents. I'll call also, but we got to make sure that we schedule that time, because if you don't get that scheduled today or tomorrow, I won't be able to offer that for free. Normally it's $75, right? Something like that where you're really leveraging the kids appropriately to respond to appointment. You can get away with that. I mean, I've had them all, here, everybody say 303. Okay, 303. 740, 740. I mean, I've gone pretty far into that, including the sticker. Put the sticker. Call me now to receive our free offer for today. Call me now to find out what I won, with the phone number and the website address that you put on all the kids. Of course, in the social distancing thing, you might want to still put it on them, and then hand sanitize. But all of that type of stuff. I mean, never be shy about the fact that if they enroll with you, it's the best thing in the world for them to have ever done. And so don't be shy about really going out of your way to get a tight conversion rate. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. I told her it was a benefit to her and her camp. I was going to offer all of them 2 weeks free
Yeah.
as an added bonus. And she was, oh, that sounds great. All I need is a waiver. That was, yep.
That's exactly right. Now, some of them will be, a lot of them are pretty incompetent. So the biggest challenge is actually getting them to get the waiver, and really what you need to do is tell them to put it up at the front counter and have whoever is letting the parents have the kids, tell them that, to fill that out before they leave, so their child can participate in that, and then figure out who they didn't get. So maybe the morning of, they can have them all fill it out on the drop-off point. Because otherwise, if you leave it to them to figure it out, oh, well, we sent it home with all of them. That'll be the reaction. What I did want to do before I forget is, if I remember correctly, Steve, you put a couple of rack card layouts up, and Ron, you put an ad layout up. I wanted to go through and dissect those a little bit for everybody, if you guys would find that valuable. I figured it'd be valuable for everybody. And so, Bob, can you find those and share the screen so that I'm not messing around with it while I'm trying to talk here?
Yes, sir. Let me look for them real quick.
And by the way, I posted the recording of our Tuesday Mastery Leadership meeting for everybody, and then I dissected my rant on get your head out of your ass and just do business right now separately. But on that recording, we talked about leadership program development quite a bit with Paul Miller, with his son, and with another staff member. But the books that we were talking about on that meeting, I posted them all in the discussion forum. So the 2 Maxwell books, and then I posted another a couple by Jocko. I always butcher his name, Jocko Wilkins, who's got some really good The Way of the Warrior Kid, Extreme Ownership, and another book that he did. But yeah, if you can find those ads, yeah, that's the books I was talking about. If you can find those ads, Bob, we'll go through that. Keep going.
Yeah, I gotta keep scrolling. Let me see here.
Yeah.
Uh,
The first thing, Ron, because I have this top of mind, be careful about colors you use in print, and be thinking about the way that the mind works, right, in reading things. And one rule of thumb is reversals. Does everybody know what I mean by reversal? A reversal is when you use a color as the background, no matter what color it is, but let's say it's black background and white letters. if you go from normal white background, black letters to black background, white letters, it makes it hard for people to read. And I've done ads where the headline was a reversal or the whole ad was a reversal, but usually it was only complete black background, bold white letters. But all the studies show reversals are more difficult usually for people to read. If you don't know what I'm talking about, my name on the screen, everybody's name on the screen, those are reversals. Black background, white lettering, as opposed to white background, black lettering, right? So I'm always very careful with reversals. Did you find Ron's ad, Bob?
Ron's, I pulled up Stevens, not.
Okay, well, go ahead and pop open Stevens.
This is the one you were referring to?
Yeah, let's do those two. Okay. So here's Stevens. Steven, I think myself and Master Smith did quite a bit of feedback on this already, right?
We've already made a lot of changes to it, but it's good for everybody.
The one that you have changes on, is it already up here? Is it up here as well?
I think we reposted the latest iteration, but I can also just do it if you want.
Yeah, I think you can share your screen as well. If you want to pull it up and share the screen. I don't remember if that got automatically locked down or not.
I may have to make you a co-host, Steven.
Yeah, why don't you do that, Bob, just in case.
Yes, sir.
Zoom keeps changing all these security requirements, as you guys all know better than I do.
Okay. Steve, I made you a co-host, so you should be able to share now your screen.
Ron, do you have yours there on your desktop as well? No? Okay,
No,
well, we can find the one in.
Yeah.
Bob, why don't you locate Ron's, and we'll share that after we do Steve's. Then. Or whoever finds it first. But key elements, as you guys are looking for that, is every ad really doesn't matter if it's a 30-second TV spot or it's a magazine ad or it's a rack card. Every ad has to have a powerful headline. And generally, and there are some exceptions to this, but in a lot of cases, like Facebook, getting somebody to look at the ad, it's like 80% is the photo. In print, it's more the headline than it is the photo in most cases, but both of them are important. But generally what I'm going to say is that 80% of the battle is getting a headline that gets them to read everything else. 15% of the battle is having a powerful call to action, time limited, to get them to respond. And then you've kind of got everything else, right? So when we start with this one, is the first thing is the entire ad is a reversal, right? So generally, I'm not wild about that. You know, that I'm equivocating a lot. Part of what makes rack cards work is changing the color, and the easiest way to change the color is change the background on a reversal, so it essentially becomes a green card or a red card or so forth. The reason I say that is you don't want to leave rack cards the same card in the same place for more than about 6 weeks. And then you want to change the look and feel completely. Because think about, like, if I'm a patron of the Dairy Queen and we take the baseball team there once a week, and I go there once a week for 6 weeks, I just stopped seeing it. Once I saw it, did we stop sharing? Yeah, let's leave that up. Okay, well, there's a different one. But so changing the look and feel makes a big difference. Steve, can you go back to the other one? But let me start with this, is a big mistake that could be made. Ron, it's one of the mistakes I've seen Barry make over and over and over again, is trying to be all things to all people. So you never really want to do an ad that's, you know, hardcore adult self-defense, aimed, let's say, predominantly at men, and then women's kickboxing, and then cute kids in white uniforms doing karate, and have that all be in the same ad. The problem with every one of those categories is they see the other stuff and then they conclude it's not for me, right? You know, 27-year-old men who want to do MMA don't want to see cute kids in uniform. They want to see cute women, but you know, it's seeing cardio kickboxing changes the subject, right? So you've got always want to rifle target as much as possible. You know, you're doing kids, you're doing adult women, you're doing adult men, you're doing fitness, you're doing hardcore defense or whatever it might be, right? My first thought about this one was that font. Although that font gets the point across a little bit, it looks a little urban. It's kind of cool, but in a reversal is hard as hell to read, right? Now, if it wasn't a reversal, if it was white background, black letters, probably pretty cool, right? And you could have the entire top quarter be white with black letters, have all of the headline be the same. And from a self-defense standpoint, it's not bad. And it would be a lot more readable that way, right? What I would, in all likelihood, do is I would move the call to action, the offer down to the bottom rather than leave it at the top. You know, what I might do is do a little banner there that says special free offer. But I would have the call to action and the offer down at the bottom to get them to read through the rest of it as well, right? Then we have, I love training at KMMA. In this context, as a reader, I have no idea what KMMA is, right? So I'm careful about the way I do things like that. I especially don't particularly like abbreviations. But I love training at KMMA. I get to train with the most real world self-defense in a fun and safe environment alongside other families and individuals, including leaders, professional business people of all ages. It's a great workout too. You know, that's not bad. What I might want to do is try to get the testimonial not to focus on everybody and their brother as well, right? So if this is an adult oriented thing, you know, I love my training. I get to train in a safe and comfortable environment with real world self-defense. And alongside other people who have a positive attitude and are as eager to learn as I am, including leaders, business professionals. You see what I'm saying? And, you know, in this case, Bill, I don't know Bill, but I'm sure he wouldn't mind you tweaking his, you know, his testimonial, right? Then when you have a photo, and you do here, identify the photo. Other studies show people will read, like if they're reading a magazine or a newspaper, they'll read the photo captions before they read the article, right? So, you know, if I had the picture of Bill there and, you know, I'll put a little caption, you know, Bill, student for, you know, 22 months at, you know, whatever. And the full name and the title there, CEO, Pasco, EDC, that's helpful. You always want to have full name and any other kind of identifiers that they'll give you, right? Look at the other one. One, I love that they're an RN. That's great, Steve. The reversal makes it really hard to read. It says, I love the confidence training. Again, I'm reading it. I don't know what KMMA is, right? Gives me to protect myself and my family. Plus I have fun and I get a great workout. Yeah, I mean, that's fine. The more you can, the more you want before and after language, right? Before I started, I was this. After I've trained, I'm this. It's harder to pull it out of people, right? You know, I was fat, dumb, and lazy, and now I'm slender, fit, and confident, right? But that's what you want as much as possible. You know, and with parents for kids, a lot of times it's easier to get them to say that than it is for themselves, right? but a conversation of, I was really timid and needed to lose 30 pounds. And now 12 months later, I'm in the best shape of my life and am confident in all situations. That kind of language is more powerful. Does that make sense? Because it's results oriented. Again, the reversal makes it hard to read. What's the full name of your school, Steve? Remind me. Krav Maga.
Krav Maga Martial Arts.
Okay. And then the website is Tampa Krav Maga.
Yes, sir.
And do you want them, when they're focusing on it, you want them remembering Krav Maga martial arts?
Should a similar question that we were actually already considering that now we might be addressing. Should I change the website to be Krav Maga Martial Arts? So that since that's the name, I own that as well. I could do that.
Well, it's much easier to get them to remember Tampa Krav Maga than Krav Maga martial arts.
Okay.
So it's a pretty good URL for driving people to intros, right?
Keep that.
I'm just not a fan of abbreviations, and there are illustrations everywhere you look of companies that use abbreviations, right? IBM, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the problem with most of those is using as a reference is they've been around for 120 years. AT&T, nobody has to remember what AT&T stands for. In essence, AT&T is the, they don't have to remember it's American Telephone and Telegraph. Or that 3M is mining, metallurgy, and something else. But it's really harder for people to remember an abbreviation. I always thought, there's a great book, by the way, it's been out forever, but it's called Positioning: The Battle for Your Mind. And it talks about this. I read that, back in 1981, probably pulled it off Master Smith's bookshelf. But it talks about creating names so that people remember, and it talks about positioning yourself. And the example at the time was the release of the IBM PC and the Avis We Try Harder and so forth. But, you might think about that from a standpoint of making it meaningful when they look at it, right? I'll squeeze in a snarky comment is, good for you, Steve, of not being pissy about Krav Maga and the word martial arts being the same line. I always like to pick on Krav Maga guys, but I won't pick on you too much because you're making a good effort here. But you might think about that. I don't have an immediate solution. Do me a favor, though. Open up the website and let's look at the website while we're doing this too. Steve, can you do that? And
That's going to be a lot better soon, though, because I hired Master Moody. So, but I'll show you. I'll show you what I got right now, anyway, if you like.
Well, sure. So you hired Go to Karate.
Yes, sir.
Just to differentiate. It gets a little confusing from time to time.
Yes, sir.
I can do that if you do. Can you do it quickly, Steve?
I got it, sir.
Okay, good. The other photo that you had used, by the way, was you punching some hapless guy in the throat.
He wasn't just some guy. He stole a school from me once. So
He had it coming.
he had it coming. Yes, sir.
Okay. Hence your desire to use that photo, however unproductive it might be.
Yes, sir.
I can identify with that. I might reutilize Nick Okinis' line of "Leave him to heaven," but there's a strange dichotomy where all ages, but even adult male 27, mostly they think of learning self-defense as different from learning how to fight. And there's no reason to pop that bubble too early for them, right? And so the language you use, the photographs you use, everything else is actually showing them in what looks like Mortal Kombat is tricky at best, and I would argue best avoided in most cases. Secondarily, there's a underlying moral reflex for most people that don't do this picture is because his life was in danger. They trick it. They immediately go into this person's inflicting bodily harm, and that's a bad thing. And the underlying subconscious is I don't want to learn how to inflict bodily harm. I've heard a lot of very experienced martial artists. Tim Kovar was one of them, that when they get into something like using knives, their moral reflex overwhelms them, and they don't like hearing what this does and how you use it and so forth. So you've got to be aware of that in your ads as well. So scroll up a little bit here. A couple of good things is you have the phone number right at the top. A lot of people bury the phone number thinking that their mission is to get an opt-in. And yeah, you want an opt-in, but really the reason you want an opt-in is to get them on the phone. So if you can get them to get on the phone without going through all the other crap, even better, right? And then on this website, which by the way, the use for the other website might be to create a separate website for whatever you want to focus on most, right? So you could do KravMagaMartialArts.com that focuses on the kids program or focuses on the men's program, right? If you look at, for Mile High Karate, we've always had several sites, but MileHighKarate.com really wasn't meant for prospects, although it got found a lot of times, oftentimes came up first in search. So the first box was, like you have here. If you're looking for lessons, click here. FreeKarate.com was the one we used that was only for prospects, had no student stuff at all. And then we would have like a kid site so we could direct them directly to the kid site and it wouldn't go through the sorting process, right? But this is pretty good, but click martial arts for kids. Let's see how that looks. Okay, so it starts with a testimonial. Go ahead and keep scrolling down. And that's it. Okay, so what you need always is more of a reason for them to fill out the box. If I'm a uninitiated prospect and you say get started now, well, what the hell does that mean? Right? And a lot of times we'll build a much lower threshold, for a complete information package, for a free book, for, a free widget, something like that, which is a real low bar, which doesn't imply they're like signing up for anything, right? You do have the free offer above, and that's good, right? But if you scroll down, let me see a little bit more of the opt-in box. Yeah, the good thing here is you're getting, now, you probably don't need phone and mobile. Almost always what they give you anymore is a mobile number. But what we do want to do is get to collecting a mailing address too as quickly as possible. A lot of the design, Go to Karate may do this for you as well. A lot of the design is get name, email address, phone number, and then take them to a page where there's a reason that they need to give you a mailing address. I'm going to mail you a free book. I'm going to mail you a free CD. I'm going to mail you something to collect mailing address, because then we can kick off more follow-up sequences. Is that making sense for everybody? When they get the first iteration done, we'll come back to it, Steve, and then beat it up a little bit as well and share that with everybody. Bob, are you good for going to Ron's ad?
Yes, sir.
Let's pull up Ron's ad. Is that helpful, Steve?
Thank you, sir, very much.
Yeah. Oh, and that record we were looking at, what's on the back?
Well, at the beginning, I had one side that was kids and one side that was adults. You had already corrected that, so now we're working on the backs of each.
Okay.
We're creating two others. In fact, I did have, if I could ask one more question.
Yeah.
I also felt like our headlines were all like weak. And today I thought of one for the kids, and I thought of two for the kids and family sides. Maybe I could run those by you real
Go
quick.
ahead. Go ahead.
One was for the kids side that had, because the mom had a testimonial about his focus improving. So I was thinking about putting focus as a superpower. Start your family superhero training today.
I love it. I love it. And by the way, you're embedding into that something that I really like, which is the headline ties to the testimonial, which ties to the benefit, right? The single most successful ad I did, over 35 years, was a testimonial ad where the headline led into the testimonial that then led into the body copy, right? So in trying to figure out the two sides, what you could do is you could have 3 or 4 paragraphs of description of the program and the offer on the front, and then use the back for exclusively testimonials, right? On the back, you want a secondary headline and you want to reiterate the offer, right? On the back, what I would do with the offers, I would do a coupon box. People still respond to that. So if you did the bottom third coupon box and then outlined what the offer was, make sure you don't do it in reversal. It's white background, black or blue or red letters. But do a coupon box with the full offer, including the response mechanism. And this is a little controversial, but I'm leaning to get rid of the website as a response mechanism and just drive them to a phone number, right? It kind of goes against a lot of ingrained over the years, but one, for everybody's benefit, never try to drive them to Facebook. I see a lot of that. Like us on Facebook. Who the hell gives a shit about liking you on Facebook? I want them to call me, right? Sure. And by the way, likes on Facebook are worth approximately 1/10 of a penny. It's just, it just doesn't matter. The only particular reason for your business page to have a bunch of likes is for it to be social proof that, there hasn't been two poor suckers that liked you and nobody else cares, right? But that's really about it. So for everybody's benefit, never drive them to Twitter, drive them to Facebook. Don't drive them to email you. I see a lot of people putting their email address on there. I wouldn't do that. You certainly can do 2 response mechanisms, but what we know in today's day and age, a website opt-in or a Facebook opt-in, still the biggest challenge is getting them on the phone, right? So if I can drive them to call me as the primary driver, I'm going to go back to that. We are out of, we've gone through the cycle. If they want to find your website, they'll find your website in 12 seconds online, right? So you'll still get a lot of them that'll go to the website because they almost all the soccer moms Google you before they respond.
I will say, sir, I heard you say that once. I don't even remember what was recorded video or one of these, but you mentioned that, the even direct mail was going back to that. Yeah. And so, I've been here early every day and I've been personally handling the phone and I've been using everything on the phone. Yeah. And sure enough, setting much more intros as a result than what was happening the other way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, an inbound call is worth 10 times an opt-in. There we go. There's the other ad. And Ron, let's start with what I was talking about with reversals. For me, looking at it, I don't read anything in the bottom that's in a reversal. And I like the headline, but it's harder to read as green with a yellow background, right? And our colors for Mile High Karate was red and gray, charcoal gray. But I didn't spend a lot of time trying to get everything to be in those colors. The rule was the logo was always in red, right? But other than that, like with the premier colors of gold and green, is as long as you have the logo in the right color scheme for the branding purposes, it doesn't really help you much to try to have everything else in those colors. And especially a combination like green with yellow background is hard to read, right? The only thing that would be worse is if you reversed it and it was green with, with yellow letters. But the one thing that you have a testimonial, but it's buried down here where I can't read it. Okay. I might change it to, instead of the bullet points are helpful if you're doing a 3-page letter. The old style of developing like martial arts ads was everybody used just bullet points. But, the research shows it doesn't pull very well in freestanding. And of course, everybody and their brother now says it's self-defense, self-esteem. I would much rather pull the testimonial up and pull it up here, maybe rewrite the testimonial so that it tied into the headline. So if you had the headline be, and it could be the same thing, it could be karate taught my child so much, or taught, was the best. The one I used a lot was karate's the best thing I ever did for my child. But if you kind of had the headline tie into testimonial and use the testimonial as body copy there, that would be more powerful. Generally, you're better off with 2 or 3 paragraphs of copy than you are with bullet points. And if you can make the copy useful testimonial, that's even more powerful a lot of times. Is that making sense, Ron?
Yeah, it sure is.
The other thing on the Indiana, and I put a lot of this already up in the Facebook group, but you're having a grand opening for which one of the locations?
The Illinois Road.
Okay, Illinois Road. Is there a cross street, or is there something that's recognizable that like everybody that's near that location would know where it was immediately?
Yeah, there's a cross street.
Okay, so they would know what that cross street is?
Mm-hmm.
So, I might prefer it to be grand opening at Illinois Road and whatever the cross street is, rather than, the Indiana. They're all in Indiana, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean that doesn't add any value. And down on I'm putting the locations, and again, they're too small to read, and them knowing where the locations are is really important, and them responding immediately by phone or going to the website is extremely important. I would want the call to action in the coupon box also, right? It could be, call and the phone number for our special, for our introductory special or our grand opening special, right? You could get rid of introductory, you could get rid of special twice, and it's, call for our grand opening special. And then it's the 2 lessons in a uniform for $19.99. But I would have a value attached to it, right? Our $75 value grand opening special for only $19.99. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
On all of this stuff, all the little legalese that most of these advertisers put in, I always just get rid of it, right? Are you once every 3 years going to have somebody who brings in 3 of them and wants to do 6 months of lessons? Sure. Just tell them to go away. And whatever the other stuff is on it. If it's something that's important, make it bold enough where they read it. And otherwise, having legalese, everyone assumes that the offer is too good to be true and you're taking away in the 1/10 point type that they can't read. So you're better off not to have that there to begin with, right? But if it were me, what I would do is I would use that whole bottom section without it being a reversal with the locations and the phone numbers. Well, you're using the same phone number for all of them, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's fine. So I would have each of the locations be the cross streets with, if there's some other identifier so people immediately know where it's at. Because I want it to be when they look at it, they go, oh yeah, I've seen them next to Home Depot. Oh yeah, I've seen them next to, the Kroger's, whatever it might be, right?
Yep.
I want that immediate reaction. Because again, most of your students are coming within a pretty narrow radius. they've probably driven by your school 1,000 times without knowing it, right? So you want that reaction of, so I always did all the locations where at Kipling and Jewell, 64th and Wadsworth, 120th in Colorado, it was the cross street. And then sometimes the second line where like Fort Wayne is and of course you're going to hit people only in Fort Wayne, I assume, with this, since they're
Correct.
all in Fort Wayne. Like in my case, I always had to put Arvada, Westminster, Lakewood, because they were all suburbs. In your case, you could have the cross street and then the shopping center or next to or something that's identifiable, right? You know, other than the obvious of it, not that it's behind McDonald's or next to Starbucks, there's too damn many of them. But next to Home Depot, you know, right next to, you know, some recognized toy store, whatever it is that like everybody in the neighborhood would know, that might be helpful. But then I would use that entire bottom section for the locations and the phone number, maybe to drive also to the website. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure does.
Premier Martial Arts, is that the corporate site or is that your site?
That's the corporate site.
Okay. Bob, can you share Premier Martial Arts real quickly?
I will try to do it quickly.
As a franchisee, are you obligated to drive to the corporate site?
I'm not.
Okay. In your case, I'm assuming you're not going to get anybody lost over to another location. And frankly, I never worried about that either way. If somebody's closer, they're closer. Yeah, just let's open that up real quick. Okay, so Kid Martial Arts, check out our, scroll a little bit more, Bob. Check out our special offer. Opt in real quick, Bob. You got to select a program. Bottom right. Bottom right of the opt-in page.
Oh. I don't know. What do you want?
Do the kids martial arts.
Okay.
Okay. Keep scrolling. Okay, carries that over. That's good. Keep going down. Okay, so you're doing a $19.95 offer, and the default on that site's $39.99. So that becomes a little bit of a problem.
Yeah, fill that out.
Yeah. And then scroll back up a little bit.
Let me know.
Click on the locations.
It won't let me click.
Oh, so it's pulling it up by IP.
Yeah. Well, no, because I put in my zip code on the front page. So,
Oh, okay. Okay, so it's pulling up.
Yeah, so that carried over.
Okay, so we're not going to be able to delve deeper into that. Go back up a little bit. Yeah, see, mistake number one is Amanda E, not full name, but the offer is, well, the offer is the same offer that you're offering. It's just for double the price. So, Ron, one thing, I would make sure that what you were running was congruent with what's on the corporate site, or drive them to your individual site.
Okay.
You know, overall, I mean, I don't know what their conversion rates are, but you know, it's not a perfect site, but it's not a horrible site either, right? So it's not too bad. Back up a little bit there, Bob.
Back to the other page.
Yeah.
I was going to check and see if it pulled Ron's location up. I was going to put in his zip code.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Where do you want me to go, sir?
Ron, having been an active franchisor, I've got to say their efforts on the other side are extremely pain in the ass as well. Is getting the schools to use the site and having it work smoothly. So I don't mean to be critical of Barry's effort on this. This isn't bad. From my initial impression is it isn't bad. I'd have to see the numbers on conversions, which could improve my perception or not. It's all about numbers. The language on the top is a little awkward. Go down the page a little bit more. I mean, ideally, I'd like it to be as soon as the opt-in comes in, it's bringing in sales copy to get me to call. This one's bringing up sales copy to get me to put a credit card in. My guesstimate is the conversion, the people who actually put a credit card in isn't very good.
Correct.
And once they do put the credit card in, does that come to you, all the data directly?
Yep.
Do you get a sense that you're getting all that information immediately?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Are there any built-in follow-up sequences?
There are.
Okay. Okay. So again, I go back to what I started with before. I'd rather they just call me. The site isn't the only real glitch is the offer you're putting out and the offer on the site are two different things. Which in some cases is going to repel them. The thing is, well, click Kid Martial Arts, Bob, directly. Okay, so then that takes them to the opt-in screen. Yeah, that's okay. The worst that's going to happen is it really dampens the likelihood of anybody registering online, although not many of them are going to do it anyway. But then you've already collected everything but mailing address. And I don't remember if the website collected mailing address when they were on the other page. I'm assuming it did if it's collecting credit card information. Do you know top of your head, Ron?
I think it does.
Okay. Bob, can you go back to the ad?
Yes, sir.
Generally, the photos that they're using on the site are pretty good now. The last time I had looked at it, they had the guy with bare chest and the sexy girl with boxing gloves and the cute kids like lined up side by side, and that's doesn't flow very smoothly. So if you made the bottom more readable, blew up the size of the locations, used cross streets, put the phone number also in the coupon box, keep or don't keep the Premier Martial Arts, or create a shadow site that you can modify the offer and so forth to keep it congruent, right? The
Yeah.
general look and feel of the site, you could keep the look and feel. The only thing I would really do is once they opt in, I'm going to drive them to call me. Be more concerned about that than trying to get them to put in a credit card. We keep trying to get online paid to work better, because in theory, at least, it's going to be easier to get them in once they've given you money. What it does tend to do is drop the opt-in rates and drop the conversion rates, generally. So you have to trade off. It's a more solid intro versus it's harder to get them to put it in. So you have a bigger drop-off rate. Otherwise, it's pretty good. I had commented before, I don't think I would use both photos. What I'm going to say is a little controversial here. What's the racial makeup in each one of your three schools?
90% white, 10% other.
Okay. Given that, I'd use the bottom picture.
Okay.
We do oftentimes make a mistake, and I don't mean to be controversial about this in any way, shape, or form. Well, let me ask another question. Pick any one of the locations. What's the racial makeup in the school compared to the racial makeup in the community?
It's about the same.
Okay, then that's fine. I see a mistake a lot of times where you know, like I was always fairly sensitive to this about, we have a fairly low black population, but a fairly heavy Hispanic, maybe parents speak Spanish, kids are bilingual, right? And I always, as much as I could pull it off, would have a bilingual instructor in the areas that had a heavy Spanish population. Couldn't always pull it off. But if I was in an area that was reversed, let's say I have 70% black population, 30% white population, I want to have a black instructor in there. And I want to have at least one of the photos is a black kid or a black student. Preferably the stuff going in that area is predominantly, right? So you do want to be aware of that. In your case, it's 90-10, you know, so it's not that big a deal otherwise. But I was always sensitive. We had a school in Aurora, Colorado, and we never were as heavy a black student base as were the numbers in the area. And I was always very sensitive to that, wanting to figure out what else can I do in the marketing and or the operations. Generally, a female instructor will bring more women. A black instructor will bring more black students. An Hispanic, especially bilingual instructor, will bring more Hispanic bilingual students, etc. So it's politically incorrect nowadays to say that. But by the way, I've never had much of an issue the other direction, again, being politically incorrect. I've had little problems with having a black instructor with a predominantly white population. I've had a hard time having a white instructor in a predominantly black population. So I always am sensitive to that. I had one location 30 years ago that in my mind was a lot of racial problems in the area. And it was the only time I ever had any issue the other way. I actually ended up firing 10 or 15 students who didn't like having a black instructor. It was kind of nice to purge, frankly. But you do want to be sensitive to that for everybody. In picking who goes in the photo, I want the photo to match the makeup of the area. And if you have an area that's very mixed, Asian, Hispanic, black, white, get a rainbow in the ad. Because people respond to like, right? So if I was in a predominantly black area, I wouldn't have this photo up there. I wouldn't have the little cute brunette and blonde kid. I'd have her, which is a very good picture, by the way. So I would always be aware of that.
Hey, Ron, is that the phone number? Is that your school phone number?
Yes,
I know
sir.
it is your school? Oh, okay. I didn't know if it went back to corporate or if it was.
Yeah, again, couple, you know, if I went through and beat up the corporate side, I could beat it up a little bit, but for it to be accurate, I'd have to look at the numbers and what the Google, you know, what the Google traffic was and what the conversion to opt-ins were and so forth, and how the search placement is. But I don't see anything obvious that you wouldn't want to use it, except for the fact that the offer's incongruent.
Yeah, and maybe driving them to call versus driving them to.
Yeah, if I were to put the other hat on, and I'm Barry, with Mile High Karate, is every one of our individual franchisees thought they were an internet marketing expert, and they would go try to create their own site. And in every case, it was complete abysmal failure because we had put a ton of time tracking the logs, tracking the conversion, tracking, you know, and having everybody under the same site really helps your SEO, right? So on the other side, with what they're dealing with is an awful lot of self-appointed experts that mostly don't know what the hell they're talking about, and constantly battling the battle of giving the individual locations what they want versus doing what really works. And it's a constant mind-numbing battle, I've got to tell you. Any other questions on that, Ron? Does that give you some thoughts?
Yeah, it definitely helps. Thank you.
Good. Okay, so you can stop the screen share then, Bob. Any other questions on? We've had two topics, pretty in depth so far. Any questions on either one of those? We talked a lot about marketing with the summer camps, and we talked a lot about the ad layout and so forth.
Master Oliver, I had something. Sometimes I have a hard time with putting that value on, like $90 value for class, because then people like, oh, they almost already know the price. Okay, so if 2 weeks it's $90, then it's what, 180 for class? I get people saying that sometimes. So I don't mind it on equipment. Like if I say DVD, progress folder, this and that, so-and-so value. But when I put it on, 2 weeks in a uniform or something like that, I tend to get, I don't know if it's me or what it is, but that feedback. So I just wondered what your thought is on that.
Well, so if you, first it's mostly you, but yeah, that's the exception, not the rule. Jack, most people barely catch the headline and the offer. And those are the ones that respond, right? So, to think that they're going to pick out something out of the third paragraph and, hold it to you later, that happens occasionally. Although sometimes that kind of nitpicking stuff is a good indication that somebody who's going to be a pain in the ass for the rest of your life, right? But the solution to that is do the value on the uniform, right? 2 free weeks of lessons and an official black belt uniform, $50 value, free, right? So then the value is linked to the uniform. It's not linked to the lessons, and that solves your problem right there.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
But one other thing I was going to add too, I was looking at joining the Rotary Club. Next week they have a meeting, and they seem to be a lot in the community. They seem to be, and where I have a little bit of trouble getting in the community, they seem to be really good at fundraising stuff, community stuff, this and that. What's your thought on that, sir?
There's two sides. One is, being in any organization where it networks thoroughly is useful. It's kind of like Chamber of Commerce. I went to like 2 Chamber of Commerce meetings and realized it was all, mortgage brokers, realtors, and bankers all trying to pitch each other, right? None of whom were going to do me much good, other than rejecting me for a business loan when I, was trying to open. It's the same old thing. I put together the 200-page business plan thinking I was going to be able to get funded, and I managed to get a loan on my Datsun 200SX, and that was about it because it was paid off. But usually the people who are there are not necessarily the ones you're useful to, right? I mean, if I was hanging out with the Guild of Elementary School Principals and showing up to their meetings, that's really useful. But without knowing better, being there a little bit, getting to know who they are, figuring out what organizations they're involved with, getting a relation with the local hospital. I mean, hospitals are great because you have a jillion employees. So you can go do something for all the nurses. You can do something for the docs. They're all concerned with patients who get out of control and all that kind of stuff. They're all concerned with health and fitness and putting them into. So, you might try it and see what it is. I always am careful about investing a lot of time in a low result activity versus spending it where I know there's bigger results.
Yeah, before COVID, I mean, I had all these booths lined up. I had all kinds of marketing ready to go, and then that killed me. So I'm still looking for other ways that I can still kind of get out there and network and they looked like they had. It wasn't like, because I've been with the chamber, and you're right, the chamber is just a bunch of business. I don't know. Was like that, like a lot of.
It's a B2B networking.
Yeah. Where this seems a little different, like they've got people on all different maybe lines of work, and they do a lot of business networking too, as well as other things. So I was thinking at least giving it a shot, going to a meeting. Yeah,
just look through the membership base, look through who's showing up, and see if it's a good fit. I did a lot with the Kiwanis at one time, as well, which is a comparable organization. One of the good things about, I think Lions do too. I know Kiwanis drills down into the local high schools a lot. I'm not sure they go as low as middle and elementary. But, the ones that drill down into the local schools and drill down into the local hospitals, drill down into, the local churches, which I don't think either of those do much with that. But that would be useful. Sometimes it might be easier to go just create the relationship without the extra step.
Sure.
But I would evaluate that. Let me shift topics here for a second, if that was, unless you needed something else, Jack.
No, I'm good. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Let me flip topics here for a second. Is we could kind of easily, and it's going to be, not exactly right, but categorize our members into two sides. The side number one, and you should go watch my rant from Tuesday, because I don't want to repeat all of that, but kind of into two sides. Those who tell us, my students hate Zoom and they can't get online and they don't have a computer and they aren't going to do that, and all my marketing dried up and I can't get new students. There's that side, which can maybe be categorized as the E or end of the spectrum. And then there's the other side of, screw it, I don't care what's happening. I've got to do enrollments, renewals, keep the gross up, keep my students engaged, right? The way you're successful as an entrepreneur is you've got to be the, screw it, I don't care what's happening. There's a tornado in the middle of town and it was flaming with sharks. Okay, great. Did it hit our building? No. Okay, we can still have in-person classes. We tell them to come in the back door. I mean, you've got to adopt that level of, screw it, I don't care what else is going on, right? The part of the my students don't want to is in your leadership and in your communication, right? Because, and Jan, you're on the meeting here with us, so I'll put you to work. Usually I'm putting Rachel to work, but Jan, how does the last 90 days look? You did last we knew in your absence taking a month vacation. I'm surprised you didn't leave for the summer, but you were at 98,000, I think, a week and a half ago.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're going to hit our goal of 104. I'm pretty sure of it.
Yeah. So in March, April, May, how much difficulty did you have with your students transitioning to being online as opposed to physical?
We didn't have a lot, but I had a lot in my head.
Yeah.
As you know, I stopped all my marketing because I just freaked out. I didn't know how I was going to do it, what I was going to do. So we stopped marketing for a month, and that really hurt us. But then when I started getting back into, we got to market, we got to do everything just like we normally did. And then you kind of guided us. And now my head is good. My head was not in a good place. And then the people follow that. They follow that. So we're taking precautions though, but we've got a lot of people in the studio. We're getting ready for a class right now. We'll probably have maybe 15, 20 kids here and 15, 20 kids online. So it's going well now. But a lot of it is thank you to the advice we got from getting my head out of the gutter and stopping to feel sorry for myself and worrying about that PPP loan and all that, and just getting back to business.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about, SBA money and all that stuff is people will suck up more time chasing shit like that down than they could have just created the revenue to begin with. Now, I mean, if the government's giving out free money and they give it out to you easily, fine, but, that's a whole political conversation, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But let's go back a bit. Let's go back to April. And let's assume, for argument's sake, that some of the schools on here can't be open, or they can have 3 people in the school, or or whatever it might be. Student participation in April. I know that your daughter kind of led the way in not enrollments but renewals in April. What did your student participation look like in April?
It was good. It was really good because we got on virtual right away. We focused right away on keeping all of our people. We contacted them all. We sent them postcards. We sent them letters. We texted them. We had each instructor meet with each one individually. So we did a lot to keep them engaged. And I think that's why we didn't lose very many.
Yeah. And I hear some schools who are just like flooded with people who are mad because they're still charging them. Did you have any of that kind of? I'm sure you had some.
No. We hardly had any of that stuff. I mean, the same people that wanted to quit 3 months ago, 6 months ago, a year ago, still a couple of them tried to get out of their agreement. A couple of them we just let out because it wasn't worth keeping them. But no, we didn't get, and we only gave 1 month free for every month we were virtual, because I had
Yeah.
done that before I'd even heard you saying give 2 months. And we have not had any problems with
Well,
that.
in retrospect, I would have done 1 month probably, but same old thing.
Yeah.
First concern is let's keep 100%.
Right.
Yeah.
And how can we go above and beyond on that?
Yeah, we thought it was only going to be 1 or 2 months.
Well, I from day one, I was saying May 15th. I figured things would be more or less back to normal May 15th. And, at this point, I don't think there's going to be any back to normal for a year. I really think we're on that kind of dimmer switch where we get more flexible, tap it back down. There's going to be all that kind of stuff. And if you're freaked out about that, rather than just doing enrollments, doing renewals, and keeping your student body intact, is problematic. Jan, you can analyze this one, but I was talking to one of our members that has 350 students, I believe was the number, in February. And now they've dropped 45 students in 3 months. And in that 3 months, basically have enrolled 0 people. And they're freaked out because everybody's dropping out because of COVID. Well, by my numbers, you lose 15 a month with 350 active. That's 5% a month. Most schools, the national average is 7%. I'd like it to be 1 or 2% a month, but the national average is probably 7 or 8 or 9%. I've talked to people who are dropping out 15% every month. But if you have 350 people and you don't keep doing 10, 15 enrollments a month. I remember the Kovars, they called it feeding the beast. Their big school, they had 850 active, but they had to have 55 people every month to stay even. Right? Well, if I just have my normal dropout rate and stop doing enrollments because I freak out and stop marketing, then I'm going to drop 15% over 3 months, kind of no matter what else happens. Maybe 10%, maybe 7%, but that's going to happen anyway. And it doesn't have anything to do with COVID. It just has to do with, they get bored, they go on to something else. Something else is happening. So from an organizational standpoint, we focused on, number 1, keep everybody. Number 2, let's get the marketing going again. And number 3, let's do renewals. You guys flipped it a little bit and started doing renewals before you really had marketing flow. Enrollment numbers, what have your enrollment numbers looked like this month? You're muted again. Bob, Zoom won't let us.
I think we're like 23. I think
Okay.
we're 22, 23. Rachel, I don't have it in front of me, but it's
Yeah.
good. It's really good this month. And what it was for us is seeing someone else do it, seeing Amanda do it. And once
Yeah.
I saw that, I thought, wow, we can do that.
Yeah.
And then Rachel just took off with it and did it. So, but I got into a mindset that thinking like, this is really hard. People aren't going to want to do that. And it was really up here.
Yeah. Well, which is 90% of the battle, right?
Mhm.
And as you said, I always think the biggest value of what we do is seeing other schools that are doing things successfully. And frankly, and you're a very smart person, but usually you're saying, well, they're not in any better location than I am. They're not any smarter than I am. I mean, you're kind of out in the sticks outside of Jacksonville, right? And by the way, there's been a spike. A COVID spike in the last 2 weeks. Yeah, so what, right? We'll keep doing online enrollments. We'll keep doing marketing. If they, shut down live in-person classes, so what? We'll keep enrolling people in Zoom. And if they open up, everything's back to normal. Great. But I don't think there's going to be a back to normal for a while. We've just got to keep relays, kind of the dimmer switch. And once you're open, I think we keep the in-house social distance. We keep, you did a lot in the park and outside. You've got room outside your building. So outside the building, a lot of outside stuff. People feel more comfortable with that, and keeping the Zoom schedule going full bore. But there really should be no reason why anybody has lost more than 10, maybe 15%. And most of that loss is not keeping the enrollment flow going adequately in March, April, May. Is that making sense to everybody? So if you've lost more than that, kind of your first mission is go get them back and fill the school back up. Let's make it our mission the next 6 weeks to add 100 people. The last thing I'll add, and I'm sounding like a broken record, but I really believe this can be the best summer we've had in 35 years. You have the population sort of coming out of house arrest. There was an article that I shared recently. Shared it because it's poorly written and it had an agenda. But there was a Harvard study that shows people in the top quartile of income that have a lot of discretionary income, that they aren't spending as much money as they would have been, pre-lockdown. People in the lower ends were spending the same amount of money, but the difference was personal trainers, fitness, activities like ours, restaurants, movies, theater, concerts, right? All the type of stuff where they couldn't spend that money, which means basically just stacking up. And there's a huge pent up demand, in the markets. They call it a V-shaped recovery. I think as far as the economy, there's more than a V-shape. There's a dramatic, of people getting out and spending the money. And by the way, if I'm any indication, me and my 12-year-old, as soon as restaurants started opening, we went to his Japanese steakhouse place, which by the way is not cheap. And then we went to Capitol Grill, which by the way is not cheap. And then we went to Sims Landing, which is kind of a Morton's comparable, and then some other place. And I mean, every time we went out, we're spending $200. But normally we might do that once every couple of weeks, and now in 1 week, it's like, oh my God, what's our favorite places? Okay, they're open, we're going, right? So there's just a lot of pent up demand and a lot of money out there floating around, getting ready to be spent. You've got to be in position mentally and emotionally to be in good shape with that. Jan, any words of wisdom you would give them before we call it a day?
Keep prospecting, keep going.
Yeah.
Because we were down also. We were down the first month because we lost our usual amount and we didn't bring anyone in. So we're still down. We're playing catch up now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Never take your foot off the gas on marketing. And when things seem like they're difficult, double down, don't back off. Right. That was the big mistake. You've got to double down. Now it changed a lot, right? Usually, like in Quick Start, we're talking about the 5K run, the Easter events, all of that kind of stuff. We would have loved to have been out at the big AMC Theater for Black Widow, which is now, in theory anyway, coming out in November. But you shift, but the shift was working with schools to get them to drive traffic to us, shifting to heavy on Facebook because it went up 600% in engagement, and the ad rates actually fell because big advertisers are stupid and pulled money out. And it was shifting into more networking, getting daycares and other organizations to send traffic, and all the normal grassroots stuff, flyers on the pizza boxes and all that stuff. Email started working a lot better than it ever worked. Direct mail started working better than it ever worked. But if you have the Parthenon built out and you're doing 20 different things every month, it's pretty easy to shift quickly and put more emphasis and effort on some of those things. If you've just got like the one or two things that you're doing and that's where all your traffic's coming from, it's really easy to implode quick, right? Okay, on that note, we'll call it a day. Matt Smith, anything else for everyone?
No, but if